saw advertising. That's why it's important for us to be on Facebook, on social media, texting people, inviting them to church, telling them about the goodness of God, telling them about what kind of church we have here in New Chicago. Why? Because it's advertising. Tell somebody advertising. And so they heard that others were worshiping. I consider it a blessing that we can see and hear other people giving God praise. And see, some of y'all noticing other folk praising Him because you ain't praising Him for yourself. You got to learn how to come into the house of the Lord, into His gates with thanksgiving, and into His courts with praise. Come in happy, and then you got to forget about who all is around you, who's trying to see what you got on, and give God the praise He deserves all by yourself. You got a problem with my praise, it ain't got nothing to do with you. It's a personal thing between me and God. Oh my, here old saint say, you don't know like I know what He's done for me. You don't know how wrapped up I was. You don't know how sick I was. You don't know how strung out I was. You don't know what I've been through. And so if you don't understand my past, you sure can understand my present. Can I get a witness in here? And so after Herod got the news that Jesus was born, he got upset. He tried to throw salt on the game. Young folk, he tried to throw some shade. You got some folk that's in your life that don't want to see you prosper. They trying to throw shade. They don't want to see you go up to the next level on your job. They want both of y'all in the stock room. They want all of y'all at the hub. Can I get a witness in here? They don't want to see you go forward, so they decide to put on shade. And so at this point, even though Herod was upset, he still wanted to know what a church was. You got some folk that don't like you, but they want to know what a church is. Can I get a witness in here? So he sent wise men to diligently seek Jesus. Now the Bible doesn't say 3 wise men. That is not in the Bible. It just says wise men. He sent them to seek out Jesus. Herod told them that when you find Jesus, let me know. So in other words, there had to be a testimony. So when you found Jesus, it's your responsibility to let somebody know. That's one of the things I love about Wednesday night Bible study, is because we have a chance to testify. The Bible tells us that we're overcomers by the words of our testimony and through the blood of the Lamb. You got to tell somebody, keep your testimony. Keep your testimony. And so since you found Jesus, tell somebody. And see, when they got to the house where Jesus was, they fell down and worshiped Him. We've got to learn how to worship Him. The Bible tells us that they that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. If you're real about it, you ought to be able to give worship. And see, if you're really worshiping Him, praise and worship will be an easy thing. Shouldn't nobody have to tell you when it's time to praise and worship to lift your hands? Shouldn't nobody have to tell you when it's time for praise and worship to stand? Shouldn't nobody have to tell you to tell God thank you? Shouldn't nobody have to tell you to give God praise? Because all you have to do is look in your review and see how good God has been to you. When you look back over your life and see how God has blessed you, you shouldn't have to worry about who tells you to lift your hands. When you come in, your hands ought to be lifted. When you ought to clap your hands like the devil's in between them, when you know God has been good to you. So, they brought gifts. Bible tells us to not come before the Lord empty-handed. They brought gifts. The Bible tells us they brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So in other words, even though they were objects, they were items, they were still bringing money. Can I get a witness in here? And then they received a warning from God not to return to Herod. See, one thing is, when you come in contact with Jesus, you can't go back to the devil. Can I get a witness in here? When you come in contact with God, if you really have a real born-again experience, your life will never, ever be the same. That's just for the people who met Jesus. Has anybody met him today? Has anybody met Jesus? So it doesn't matter when it was. It doesn't matter where it was. You might have met him at the house. You might have met him, oh my God, on a Sunday morning. They had a load. And the enemy has a way of putting a heavy load on you. Oh my God. And so they received the warning not to return to Herod. And the Bible tells us that after they had met up with Jesus, they went home another way. And I want to tell you, as we begin to leave you today, I want to remind you that since you met Jesus, you need to go home another way. No matter what it is that you've been going through, all you have to do is meet Jesus. And after a while, things will begin to change in your life. I don't know about you, but I'm glad that I met Jesus. Do I have anybody here that's so enough glad that you met Jesus? I met him, oh my God, on a Tuesday night. I was getting ready to go to jail for a crime I didn't commit. And the Lord, they told me that it was time to come on in the house. And so now we understand that because I was the pastor's son, I already had keys to the church. I didn't want to wait till Sunday morning. I couldn't wait for Bible study night. I simply opened up the church myself, got down on my knees, and said, Lord, I just want to meet you. Lord, I just want to walk with you. Lord, I want you in my life. Tears rolling down my face. All about all I've done wrong. All of the transgressions. All of the sin. And how the young lady was here Sunday and said, I want to come back next Sunday and get saved. I told her the Sunday, I said, if you wait till next Sunday, you might lose your life while you have the blood running warm in your veins. It's time to meet Jesus. Oh, it's time to meet Jesus. No matter what you've been going through, Jesus is able to fix it. While you're in the miracle, in a manger, some of you met Jesus at some crazy places. Some of you met Jesus in some places you shouldn't have been in. But it doesn't matter where you met him. It doesn't matter when you met him. The important thing is that you met Jesus. You ought to wave your hand and say, I met him. I met him. Yeah, got to go. It's almost 11. I told you we'd be out in an hour. Got to leave you here. But before I leave you today, can I close out with my story? Come on, can I close out with my story? I wish somebody would say, tell your story. Yeah! There was a rich man. Lord, have mercy. Yeah! There was a rich man. Had every material possession that anybody could ever ask for. He had houses, he had land, he had cattle, he had untold riches, he had money in the bank, he had money in the drawer, he had money in safes, he had everything that anybody could dream of. And he turned to his wife and said, look here, honey, I need me a son. I don't have anybody to leave my inheritance to. I need a baby that I can write off in my will and leave to them all of my worldly possessions. Well, a few months later, his wife got pregnant, and she got pregnant with a baby boy. And then 3 months later, she died in childbirth. Then a few months later, the baby